Questions for oral answer. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Construction Contracts Amendment Bill, third reading.
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Speaker, I move that the Construction Contracts Amendment Bill be now read a third time. Mr Speaker, the building and construction sector is a significant sector of the New Zealand economy. It contributes about $16 billion per year to GDP and employs over 200,000 people. It is central to the rebuild of Canterbury and to resolving some of the housing and infrastructure challenges for Auckland. The industry needs the very best of construction law that will work for massive multi-billion-dollar projects like of the Waterview Tunnel, down to smaller projects like home alterations. This task of ensuring our construction law is fit for purpose is even more important now than ever, given the massive building program projected over the next few years. It is during such boom times that there is a risk of commercial and building practices getting sloppy. I must reflect briefly on the history of New Zealand construction law. Prior to the fourth Labour government, we had the Wages Protection and Contractors Liens Act that enabled a builder or subcontractor to register their interest in a property and ensure payment against the title of the land. The minister that was then responsible, Geoffrey Palmer, argued there was no such need for special legislation in the sector and that the law of contract was sufficient. The problem with this academic approach was that the management of risk in the sector favoured property developers and main contractors at the expense of the thousands of small businesses that did the bulk of the actual construction work. If a project was successful, all was well, everyone got paid, and the developer took their profit. If the project went bad, the developer went broke, and the contractors and their subbies did not receive payment. The practice developed for the worse in the 1990s with the evolution of pay-when-paid contracts, creating a precarious stack of cards and excessively risky developments. It became increasingly apparent that this laissez-faire approach was not working, and in 2001 I tabled a members' bill for a Construction Contracts Act. The government of the day, led by Minister Lala Hari, thought likewise, and so the 2002 Act came into existence. The Act has worked well. It has provided an effective payment dispute resolution process and knocked on the head those particularly obnoxious contractual arrangements of pay when paid. This bill arises from necessary improvements to that law. The most significant of the changes are in respect of retentions. These will be welcomed by the tens of thousands of mum and dad businesses involving plumbers, painters, electricians, tilers, plasterers and many other trades. The retentions are sums where the principal or main contractor retains a portion, often 10%, to ensure that the work is of standard. The first changes in this bill is that it makes plain the prohibition on the pay-when-paid provisions apply equally to those retentions. The second change arises from the way some contractors misuse these retentions as working capital for the next project. This puts the subbies' money at risk in a way in which they have no control or ability to minimise the risk. The failure of Mainzeal, where $18 million of retentions were lost to mum and dad subcontractors, well illustrates the need for law change. The losses were of a scale that it caused huge pain for hundreds of small and medium-sized businesses across New Zealand and also resulted in some of them failing as a consequence of those payments not made. The bill significantly changes the law in how retentions must be managed. The significance of requiring they be held on trust is that they will be treated preferentially in any business failure akin to wages and tax. This is appropriate. The balance we have attempted to strike in this law is maximising the security of these payments for subbies while minimising the extra compliance costs that go with these provisions. It is important for the record that I set out how these new provisions will work. Retentions are to be held on trust. Payers can hold those retentions in liquid assets, such as accounts receivable, but if they do not get paid, they are still obligated to meet those payments. The trust ends either when the retentions are paid out in full or used to fix defective work. These new retention provisions will affect about $200 million a year of funds that are held, and is a significant refinement in the way our construction law works. The Act will also be amended to remove the distinction between residential construction contracts and commercial contracts, so that parties to either kind of contract have full and equal access to provisions under the Act. These follow on from regulatory changes we made on the 1st of January requiring written contracts in the residential construction sector. This is a substantial change that more than doubles the scope of the Construction Contracts Act from about $6 billion per year to $16 billion per year. Thirdly, the scope of the Act will be widened to include construction-related services, such as the work that's done by architects, by engineers and by quantity surveyors. Parties to contracts for the performance of these services will be able to access the payment and dispute resolution processes in the Act. This amendment will be of particular benefit to consumers to help them hold architects, engineers and quantity surveyors to account for their work. It will also benefit those designers and quantity surveyors, enabling them to use the payment provisions of the Act to ensure they are properly paid for their services in a timely manner. These amendments will come into force on the 1st of September 2016 to give these professions enough time to adapt to this new construction law. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank those in the building and construction sector representatives who gave their time to participate in the working groups and reference groups to assist my ministry with the review of the Construction Contracts Act and in developing the amendments to regulate retentions. I also want to acknowledge the work of the Select Committee. Can I also thank the team in the Ministry, Parliamentary Council and all those that have worked on this bill. Mr. Speaker, this will make for a more robust and a more commercially disciplined construction sector, and as I said at the beginning, at a time when there is a record level of construction, this bill is to be welcomed by the House.
Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to.